Welcome to the show, Lenka and Anna.
Hi.
Hi, Tim.
So today we're going to talk about the privacy changes. Obviously, lots of people thinking about iOS 14 and the changes that Apple has kind of forced, but it feels like we're entering into a period of transition where advertisers have less visibility on and have less personal data at their disposal. But perhaps if we start at iOS 14, as that is kind of the trigger point for people thinking about it, what is this argument all about for those who've been living under a marketing rock? What is the fear about iOS 14?
Well, I think that the main thing is that iOS 14 is offering users the possibility um, to tell the apps not to track their information. So that's going to affect a lot of different apps, and mainly Facebook, because with Facebook ads we use the users' information like their gender, their age, um, their interests and behaviors to target our ads. So that's going to make it difficult to optimize the ads and also to track the conversions and the actions that the users perform within the platform.
So, as a business that does ads, they might hear that Facebook is no longer able to track everyone's behavior as they move across different websites and different apps on their phones and their Apple devices. Why is that actually a big deal? What does it stop Facebook from being able to see and understand, and how does that impact us advertisers?
Well, it's going to impact different sides of Facebook's business, mainly because for reporting purposes, we won't be able to have that many reporting tools as we did. We won't be able to track all the conversions.
Mm.
So, for example, if a user says that they don't want to be tracked by Facebook app, then we won't be able to track that conversion, whether that conversion is a lead submission or a purchase on the website of the user, landing page views, those sort of things. And that's for tracking and for reporting. So we won't be able to understand how the audience performs in the website of our clients. And that, of course, if the user doesn't agree to accept the tracking, which I think a lot of users are not agreeing with. They are saying that they don't want to be tracked.
Mm.
And then also for the optimization of the ads, because with Facebook, we were able to create lookalike audiences or to do remarketing of the users that went to the website and those sorts of things. So we are also going to see a big decrease on the size of our remarketing audiences and of the lookalike audiences too. And those, I think, are the two main points that are going to be affected by iOS 14 release.
So essentially, Facebook is always going to have less understanding over its users because it won't be able to see what their behavior is like on other apps. So constructing these lookalike audiences will be more difficult because they'll have fewer data points to kind of match users into different groups. And then on top of that, they won't have visibility on all the conversions that are happening off Facebook. So it feels like a pretty big moment, which I think we can assume it is a big moment with the ferocity of Facebook's rebuke of this policy. They've come out with full page ads in national press, haven't they, saying that Apple is, killing small businesses and on all this type of stuff. So, I mean, what's actually going to happen here? Are we just going to see Facebook create a workaround and this will all just go away?
Yeah, so I think we have already seen Facebook workarounds. They have been preparing users for the last couple of months. So we have been getting alerts from Facebook to prepare for these changes, to verify the domain, to select which conversion event is the most important for our account. So we will still be able to track some conversions events. And as long as we have completed all of Facebook's steps to be able to do that, it's just going to be a bit harder. So we will have to learn to how to target the ads again with this new policy and with this new restrictions. But I think it's going to be fine as long as we complete some steps and we keep tracking the information using maybe different tools like Google Analytics and tracking the ads with UTM codes. We might get less visibility from Facebook platform, but we will still have the metrics on Google Analytics or on the website's backend. It will depend on how we set up everything.
So you mentioned their UTM codes and tracking using Google Analytics, and I guess this will give us an overall picture of which channels. We'll still be able to measure the aggregate performance of Facebook, but I guess what we maybe won't get so much is the by campaign, the resolution that we have on each campaign to be able to test as well. So, you know, I know Facebook has come out with things like aggregate event measurement. Could you talk us through what this is and how this tries to kind of attempt to replicate what we're losing?
Yeah. So we now can set up to 8 conversion events on our account. And what we need to do with that is to choose which are the conversion events which are more important to us. So we need to prioritize them. And one of the latest updates about iOS has said that, for Facebook, of course, has said that if a user doesn't accept the tracking, we will still be able to track our priority conversion events. So the first one that we set, the main one, is going to be tracked anyway. So we need to do that setup for this type of purposes. And also, we still be able to measure and to track the information for the users that accept the tracking for all the events that we set, but we will be able to optimize the campaign only for those 8 conversion events that we set as a priority. So that's going to be the main change. We will need to select 8 conversion events like purchases or add to cart or lead submissions, content views, those sort of things, and prioritize them from Facebook tools. So that way we will have the information and we will still be able to track, but we will be more limited than we were before.
Yeah.
So
Oh, sorry.
no, go on,
I
Lenka,
just
go on.
wanted to add so that I believe that this aggregated event measurement is basically trying to support the app and web-based conversions by limiting the transition of sensitive data. So while still kind of supporting the advertising goals. So we won't be able to basically track as personal data as we were perhaps up until now.
Hmm.
Mhm.
And Lenka, on this, like, how much of this is about performance and how much of it is about tracking? Like, if you think about how this is going to impact our ability to run profitable Facebook ad campaigns for clients, is it actually going to impact that, or is it mostly just going to impact on the reporting side of things? In other words, we'll still be able to do the things that we've been doing. We just won't be able to show, all of this budget is attributed to Facebook. We'll have to go broader with, with the tracking and the reporting.
Yeah, this is what I believe that, obviously we're not going to be able to see as many conversions recorded within the platform, but it doesn't mean that there will be no conversions. So we kind of still need to keep an eye on the overall performance of the website and marketing mix. Obviously depends how heavily you rely on Facebook ads.
Mm. Okay. Let's talk about some practical tips then that will make life after this rollout has happened easier for marketers and business owners. Like, what are some of the things that marketers should actually do now that this is our new normal?
Yeah. So I think that We should definitely start by completing Facebook's verification process, domain verification. This can be done by adding a tag to the website. That's just paying attention to Facebook alerts and following the steps to verify the domain and to make sure that we have completed everything to have the conversion tracking in place. Then also we need to pay attention to the attribution setup because Facebook has been tracking attributions with a 28-day window so far until now. And with the new iOS update, we will be able to have only a 7 days window for the attribution setup of the conversion. So this means that for reporting, when we go into the Facebook ads platform, we will see some campaigns, the previous campaigns that we have run with a 28 days attribution window, and the current campaigns, the new ones with a 7 days attribution window. So that's going to make the data seem confusing because we won't be able to see the total of the data in the platform. So we need to just manually go into Facebook ads platform and change all the attribution to 7 days. And that way we will be able to see all the information as we did before and have the totals in place. And it will be better for reporting and to get the actual results of our campaign. So that's
What about
the
other ways
second.
of so
Yeah.
yeah, go on. Other ways of tracking. Are there any alternatives that we can be using?
Yeah, so I mentioned before UTM code. So this needs to be set up manually from the ads. So we have the campaign structure, then we have the ad groups, and then we have the ads, and the UTM codes need to be set up at ad level. So we will need to create UTMs and then place the UTMs in the ads, and with that we will be able to track the ads within Google Analytics and see the information in Google Analytics platform.
So, I mean, you mentioned they're using UTMs for different ads and different ad groups and campaigns. So this will essentially give us the visibility that we've always had, right? You could still track individual ads, you could still track individual campaigns and ad groups, right? I guess you wouldn't see necessarily what sort of person has converted on there, but you'd see which campaigns and which ad groups are performing, right?
Yeah, so you will be able to see the conversion events, but you won't be able to use that information, to use the information of the user to optimize the campaign. So that's going to still be an issue, but at least you will have the information on the conversions and you will be able to get the results from Google Analytics.
Okay. What else can people do after iOS 14 update has rolled out to kind of mitigate this?
So then, for reporting purposes, as we won't have that much information about the performance of our audiences, and that's going to be limited, we can use breakdowns of the on the Facebook ads platform. So we can break down by device or by gender or by age, those sort of things, just to get a better understanding of the audiences that we are targeting and how they perform in the platform. And that will be useful to manually optimize the ads, because until now we were relying a lot on Facebook's algorithm and how it was how it optimized everything automatically for the placements and for the audiences that we were targeting. But now we need to have a better understanding on who is our target customer, how do we find it on Facebook, and we need to do this setup manually.
I wonder, Anna, this seems to point to a trend of reducing reliance on automatic algorithmic targeting, and even in some cases algorithmic ad creation and creative creation. And it seems to be like in digital marketing we've moved more and more towards giving just blank checks to algorithms to go and create the ads and find the audiences and do this type of thing. And now we're talking about going into the ad manager and looking at actually who is converting and doing a lot of this stuff manually. Do you think we're going to go back to a time where we are understanding our customers and we're being more like marketers rather than just trusting the algos?
Yeah, I think that's going to be the case, and it's actually better because until now we needed to follow these best practices set by Facebook and to put the ads on automated placements because that meant that they were going to perform better and all. But sometimes you really want to select the placements manually, or you really want to define the audience manually instead of selecting a lookalike audience. So that's going to give us more control to advertisers, and it's going to be better to actually understand who we are targeting. So that's going to be an improvement, I think.
Super interesting. I actually think that's one of at the moment, marketers are thinking, oh, we're losing all this visibility, but I think it's going to force us to go back and understand our audience more and rely less on data that we don't even have visibility on, right? So I think at long term, it'll be a really positive step. Conversions API for Facebook. This is a sort of partial workaround, right? Do you want to talk about
Yes.
how that works and what people can do with it without getting too technical?
Actually, yeah, I will try. Actually, this solution was available before. It's not something new that we need to be doing. It's just that now that we will have less information, it's good to actually do it so we can have something at least to track. So setting conversions API from Facebook Ads platform can be done from the business settings and then from the event side on the data sources option. So that is as technical as I will get, I promise. Yeah.
But what does it do,
So
Anna?
once
How does
you
it
go,
work?
yeah. So once you go there, you can do an automated setup with the server side of your website. So for example, you can connect to WordPress or to Shopify or to the platform that you are using, and you will be able to track the conversions from the server side instead from the browser side. So for example, if the user is navigating through Safari or through Google Chrome and they have an ad blocker or something like that, you won't be able to see the conversion if you don't have conversions API settings. But if you do the conversions API settings, then you will be able to track the conversion because you're tracking it from the server, not from the browser. So even if the browser is blocking the conversion tracking, you still will have that information on the server. So that's going to be useful.
How bulletproof is that? Is that the thing that says we don't need to worry about any of this stuff?
No, definitely not. So it's just to have more information, and so we now have all these limitations, and we will have less information about how the users interact on the website, and so doing this setup and following these steps will give us more information, at least something to optimize and something to report on, and it will be useful to keep the campaign's performance at a healthy level and to still to understand how the users behave on the website.
Got it. Okay, great. So obviously you've got amazing perspective, both of you, on what's actually happening in client campaigns, and I think you're very well placed to give us a feel of what's actually happening out there in the wild since these changes have rolled in or started rolling in. So what is actually happening in client accounts? What are the real world implications of this stuff?
Um, to be honest, I think the biggest change we've seen was when the attribution model has changed from 28 days to 7 days. But obviously, that has been done in January, even for some of the
Mm.
accounts. And I think over the last couple of weeks or over the last month, ever since this update is rolled out, I personally haven't seen a huge or considerable drop in reported conversions or increase in CPA across my accounts. I think this is probably the change in attribution model will be probably most felt on accounts that have a longer purchasing journey. I think this is one of the main points to keep in mind.
Yeah, well, I guess if you're buying almost anything that takes longer than 7 days, you've got the potential that the ad that kind of brought you into the funnel doesn't get rewarded for the conversion. This feels like a significant thing, and I guess illustrates the importance of having um, different events tracked along the journey. But it makes it very difficult to optimize for those events if they don't lead to the ultimate event, which is obviously the sale. So what are advertisers going to do about this? This feels painful.
So, conversion tracking, to be honest, it never been 100%. It never been perfect. We could, in the past, we couldn't probably measure, your cross-channel conversions or cross-device conversions. And, as much as the privacy first measurement poses a challenge, I think, like Anna mentioned, it's going to make us better marketers.
Mm.
I also think that it's not just Facebook. Google is moving to more aggregated aggregated measurement as well. There isn't much information about it. I think there is. It's available in beta for some EU advertisers, and there will be Google Marketing live stream this week, which I believe will tell us a bit more about the new privacy safe measurement solutions. But it's definitely something to keep in mind. This is, we need to be responsible to users and to their data as well. So it's important to understand, what drives people's behavior, why are they coming to your website, and how we need to understand how they interact with your brand and what drives their purchasing behavior. And this will enable us to create nicer and better targeted campaigns. And we need to measure the marketing mix. So we need to keep looking at the overall picture and how things are working together. And just to ensure, because the customer's journey is not at all straightforward. So according to a research published by GE Shopper, they in 2019, according to them, 81% of shoppers researched the product online before buying, and this was in 2019. So imagine how I believe this has changed to like 100% now.
Yeah, yeah.
And so, like if the other day we were talking to him, I was like, what is a product that somebody would tell you, like a new product or a new service you would just go on the website and buy? You would probably go and check several different sites just to ensure you get the best solution to your problem or need. So it's important to know that there are several touch points on a customer journey, and we need to measure them all to understand where we need to put our advertising money.
And as a fan of marketing, I kind of get that, because the more customers you talk to, the more you realize that people are really complex, and they say, my friend mentioned this, and then I had a look at this, and then I went on Google and I searched for it, and then I found something else that was cool, and then I went on Facebook, and later I saw a retargeting ad, and then I went and searched for it. And you realize, actually, we've been looking always at, run, ad, make, sale, and that's quite a linear way, isn't it? It's like the illusion that this data, this specific conversions column in the ad manager gives us is that, press this button and sales come out. Whereas what we're doing is we're trying to impact this huge complex ecosystem where you do something over here and something pops up over here like 60 days later. And we were hoping as marketers that having more data would allow us to understand this world better. Now we're faced with the prospect of having less data and trying to understand this world. So it's a scary thought, but it's also exciting, right? Right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yes. So yeah.
Exactly.
So like you said before, we used to, this is where the attribution modeling comes in place. So the traditional, very old school model was the last click. So basically the last touch point would get all the credit. But this is a very unrealistic model, as it essentially ignores all of the other channels or touch points that contributed to the sale. So there are obviously several attribution models currently available. I would recommend to use any but last click, because you might really not know where your sales are coming from. So you, for example, have the time decay attribution model, where most of the credit, most of the credit gets is delivered to the touch point. Sorry about that. Can we cut this one
Okay.
out?
So Lenka, you're a genius. I'm going to try and simplify it for our normal people listening. So let's say that 5 things happen between the user having an idea to buy something and buying it, right? And what we're saying is that we can't just give all the credit to the last thing that
Yeah.
happens. And the time decay attribution model, you really like it. So let's say, all right, I'm buying a new memory card, and someone says to me, you want a new memory card? Or my camera says to me, you need a new memory card. So I go on Google and type memory card, and I see one. And I think, oh, it looks all right. And then I go on Amazon and find it. And I'm like, oh, I wonder if I could get it cheaper. Back on Google, search for it again. Later that night, I'm on Instagram, see a retargeting ad for the memory card, click it and buy it. So there's like 4 steps that have happened there. How would the time decay attribution model reward each of those interactions? You don't need to give me specifics, just a general kind of vibe is fine.
So the touch point closest in time to the sale or conversion gets most of the credit. That's simple, no?
That's really simple. That's really simple. But the others do get some credit. This isn't just pure last click where we say, it's the Instagram ads. Those Instagram ads are killing it and everything else is just doing nothing. We give them all some credit, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, I suppose what we're saying here is there's still no perfect attribution model, right? And as imperfect as last click was, no single model is always going to be right. And what we're essentially trying to do is square a circle in that this is always going to be a complex relationship between the advertiser and the customer, and it's going to be different. There's going to be almost infinite number of variable possible journeys. And do us marketers, like you ladies are PPC ninjas, you're extremely data driven. How do we think about the future, and how do we get away from the fact that the visibility, that CPA number that we relied on, is not going to be as reliable anymore? Do we just need to rethink marketing completely and wean ourselves off some of the data driven, or wean us off our slavery to data?
I think that the attribution models give you kind of a good idea of what's going on behind the scenes, and it's when you play around with it, you can see how different models affect your CPA, for example, which is super interesting. And in Google Ads, actually, so up until now we were talking pretty much about Google Analytics, but in Google Ads you have a data-driven attribution model. Obviously, this is only available to probably larger accounts. So I think you need to have like 400 conversions every month to be able to use the data-driven attribution model. But basically this gives credit to conversion based on how people engage with your various ads and decide to become your customers. So this is really dynamic, and it kind of knows how to add the points automatically rather than for you to be guessing which model is best for me. This way you can, and this is really, really good, especially when you're using automated bidding strategies as well.
So if we're playing with different attribution models in Google Ads and we see that, some are bringing us lower CPAs than the one that we're using, does that tell us that's a good thing? Does that tell us it's the right attribution model, or does that just tell us it's giving us more favorable data? So therefore, it makes us happier.
I think it shows us and makes us to understand the customer journey a bit better. So obviously it's favorable to us. But what we often see, especially if you have, for example, if you are running a campaign that's targeting brand searches, you will always see, for example, let's talk about an e-commerce shop and that has a shopping ads, that has dynamic ads, has some remarketing ads, and then it's got a brand ad. And often you wouldn't see many conversions on, for example, display ads, or and you would see a lot of conversions coming from a brand campaign. But when you actually change the attribution models, you might, for example, to a first click or position based, you'll be able to see that, okay, the first interaction is actually from the shopping ad, and then the second or the last one is from the brand campaign. So it just, if you didn't change this attribution model, you would be like, oh, my shopping campaigns are not performing, I'm just going to pause them. And then your brand campaigns wouldn't be performing either, because then there wouldn't be this initial touch point with the customer.
So it feels like this is potentially going to, playing with different attribution models is potentially going to mean that more advertisers are inclined to invest in top of funnel type searches than they previously would have, because, typically top of funnel is going to give you fewer conversions using last click.
Yeah, it's true. But I think it's very important to be actually investing into this top of the funnel and like brand campaigns, because this is how your customers find you, and it's important to it's the overall marketing mix, because you might be thinking, if you're looking at the last click, you'll be like, oh, this isn't working. The only thing that is working for the last click is something completely very different.
Well, ladies, this has been fascinating and encouraging. Thank you for your rays of hope in this scary world of losing data for Facebook. But yeah, I really do hope that this leads to a kind of renaissance. I was thinking earlier, as we've got more data, as marketers, as we've got more and more data, has it led to better marketers, and has it led to better advertising? Because you would think that the more data we have at our disposal, the better advertising and marketing we'll get. And actually, looking at the greats of advertising, they're all from a previous era where, the data that they had maybe was like a focus group of 15 people, but they were forced to hone their craft. They were forced to really understand their customers' drivers and to get inside their customers on a kind of human level, rather than just looking at like reams and reams of data. So my personal hope is that we move more towards that and less towards algorithmic, every human as a organic unit providing an impression. And I'm hoping that we go more towards that way. I don't know what your take on this is, and am I just living a pipe dream?
No, I think I agree. I completely agree, and I think we need to find the balance between data and between our own knowledge on how the audiences behave and what is who is our target customer. So it needs to be like a data-driven analysis, but also we need to have the human side and human analysis. And I think it's also going to be interesting because from a user's perspective, we might be very worried about our data and how it's being used and how it's being monitored by this type of platforms. But also, we are very used to getting highly targeted ads. So it's going to be a change because for users who are going to decline on the tracking from apps, they might start to get less targeted ads, and that's going to be different. And I'm not sure that people are going to like it. So that's going to be a change. We need to see what's going to happen with that.
Yeah, sort of you asked for it situation.
Exactly.
Well, anything to add, Lenka?
No, I agree with everything that was just said. Just continue doing marketing in a strategic way and respect people's privacy.
Yes, I guess it's important to recognize that all of this is happening for it's happening for the right reasons, right? This is a fundamental human rights thing, and however annoying it is to lose conversion visibility, we can't lose sight of that. Well, ladies, thank you so much for joining and sharing your expertise. This has been awesome.
Oh, thank you for inviting us.
Thank you.
And thanks everyone for tuning in. See you next time.